Hey everyone, I'm Paris Athena. Nice to meet you. I'm excited to be speaking here today. Um, I just wanted to introduce my son's pictures in the background. You'll be seeing this as I talk to you. Um, so, so today I'm going to just tell you a little bit about what I do and how I started. And then if you have any questions at all, drop them in. So, I am creator of the hashtag and movement Black Tech Twitter, and I'm founder of Black Tech Pipeline. I want to give you the origin story because you'll just have a better understanding of how I ended up where I am. So I am a software engineer, and I got onto Twitter at the end of 2018 to talk about my journey finding a new role in tech because I had just been laid off. And when I got onto Twitter, I noticed that there was a really small community of Black technologists. And so up until that point, I didn't know that there were people who looked like me in the industry because I never worked with anyone who did. So I found it really interesting. And so I decided to put out a tweet asking, what does Black Twitter in tech look like? Because Black Twitter is a thing. And that tweet, it just took off and it went semi-viral, and Black technologists from all around the world posted themselves into that tweet, and it created a really long thread of their pictures with captions of what they do in the industry. And overnight it formed this movement community and hashtag called Black Tech Twitter. So this happened very unintentionally. This was not what I expected. That's not what I intended, but it happened. And so we now have this new formed community on Twitter. We're networking, we're communicating with one another. And since it went viral and it gained a lot of media attention, a lot of employers also saw that tweet. And so employers started DMing me on Twitter very frequently asking if I would recruit candidates from this new community into their companies. And so I wasn't a recruiter and I didn't have recruiting experience, but the opportunity was there for me to take advantage of. And I said yes to all of the employers, every company. And so I created a talent application which candidates could fill out, and it got submitted to a talent database, and I curated the talent pool that I have right now. And so at first, I was recruiting people very informally. I was like, oh, I saw you need a job. I'm working with this employer. Do you want to talk to them? Sure, great. I connected them. And so that's how I was working for a long time. I was doing this as sort of like a side thing, and it was free. I wasn't charging for this. And from it, a lot of people were getting jobs for months, and that was great. However, when this turned into a business at this point, so some of those employees or those recruits who I recruited into companies came back and let me know that they left the companies that I recruited them into. And when I asked why, they let me know that the companies weren't inclusive, or they weren't giving them meaningful or challenging work. They weren't really growing and thriving at those companies. And it was just very clear that they were just diversity hires, so they're for like show. And so they left. If there's not opportunity for you there, then you're going to leave, obviously. And so I felt horrible about that. I felt that it reflected poorly on me. I didn't vet any of these companies. I just said yes to all of them. And so this is when I turned like Black Tech Pipeline. It became a business, but with purpose and a lot of intention behind it. So the problem was, first, there's not enough diversity in tech, obviously, especially with Black technologists. And then these companies cannot retain their diverse hires, reason being for the reasons why my recruits were leaving. And so I decided, okay, how can I bring more people who look like me into the industry while also helping the industry retain them? And so I decided my whole business model would be, okay, I'm going to recruit candidates into companies, and then I'm going to hold those employers accountable by checking in with those hires. So what I do now is I recruit candidates into companies. Once they get hired, I stay on the job with them for their first 90 days. So what that looks like is I do biweekly check-ins with every hire just to see how they're doing. I want to make sure they're having a good experience. I want to make sure they have the tools and resources that they need to grow and thrive within the company. Those hires give me very transparent feedback on what's going on, how they're feeling, what their goals and intentions are in that company. And I take that feedback and relay it to it's most likely their managers. So with their managers, we go ahead and talk through the feedback that we got, whether it was positive or negative. If it was negative and it's something that needs to be followed up on, I help the company navigate ways to make sure that they are making improvements and not making the same mistakes that they made with that hire for what they experienced. And then we talk about their diversity, equity, and inclusion practices and policies, and we make improvement there. And this is just my way of being able to be like, hey, how's it going? Oh, it's going well. Great. Let me relay that to the employer. It's not going well. Great. Let me relay that to the employer. So that's really what I do. I hold employers accountable, and I felt like the most simple way to do that is just by asking people at that company. Now it's candidates who I work with, just asking how it's going. And I just found a really simple way to solve a really complex problem. It's not the exact answer, but it's something that allows you to be transparent and make improvement, because you're working with companies who want that transparency and they want to take those steps forward to be actionable and not performative. So that's what I do with Black Tech Pipeline. That's how we started. It was very unintentional, but now it's turned into, this amazing company that's able to bring opportunity, resources, and connections to Black technologists and our allies and the employers that we work with. And so if anyone has any questions at all, feel free to drop them in. It is a very complex story, the way that we started, but I'd love to answer your questions. Specific ways that I hold companies accountable. So it's really within that feedback. So if we get, I guess, like, let's say I got a piece of negative feedback, I let the employer know what it was. We talk through, the experience, what happened, but how we're now going to hold, either the person who caused harm or a certain process that doesn't work. How are we going to fix that? So I don't just relay that feedback, but I'm helping them navigate ways to actually improve it. So actually taking that action. So it could be anything. It could be something really small. It could be something really big. But again, it's really just through that transparency. I'm relaying a piece of information that came from someone who was harmed, or they don't like the way a certain process is being handled. Let's improve that. So I work with those employers on it. The companies that failed, I did not go back to them. So when I was doing this for free as a part-time thing, and I told you that I was just working with anyone, a lot of those companies, a lot of them did end up being performative. Even when I implemented this model that I have now, where I'm doing check-ins and consultations with the employer, I've come across companies who, the ground level employees, and when I say ground level, I mean those who aren't like in the executive C-suite level positions, they really fought for DE&I. They were creating task force, DRGs, and things like that, which was great. However, when we wanted to implement any sort of change or improvement to a process or policy, you have to get permission from leadership. And when leadership doesn't make DE&I a priority, or it's not in the budget, or they're really slow with response time, it's really hard to make change in organizations like those. So I feel like, I'm kind of wasting my time here, and unfortunately, so are the employees. Trying to create a better culture for everyone. And so until something changes in leadership, I personally do not work with those companies again. The biggest challenge in doing this work is literally just doing the work. I feel like I am trying to teach people I guess I'm teaching people about uncomfortable topics every single day, and sometimes it feels like I'm trying to justify why someone who looks like me should be treated this way. We should be given this type of opportunity. I feel like I'm trying to justify, why me and those from my community have to be treated equally and given a fair shot. And so it gets tiring. It can become tiring, honestly. However, I am passionate about this work. I grew up with my mom doing this work. Her whole career is built around like building equity bridges and things like that. So, I got to see her come home frustrated a lot. And I'm now in those same shoes, but because I'm so passionate and driven by it, and I'm really driven by, unfortunately, like anger, because I want something so badly for my community. So it keeps me going. Do I have advice for using social or Twitter to build a community? Um, I feel like if you're trying to build a community to just, you want to be active and consistent, but like, what is your community? What message are you trying to put out there? Who are you trying to gather? Who are you trying to find? Um, I guess I would say like you could try to start a hashtag. That could work. Hashtags are a good way of looking for communities or building a community. Um, Even if you want to promote a community, you can create a hashtag. You can create maybe like a Slack community or a Discord community and have people join you there. You can do little talks, whether they're local, virtual, whatever you like. You could do talks around the community that you're trying to build and the purpose behind it and the intent, and get the word out there so that people are like, oh wow, I'm glad this community exists, let me join it. How do you recommend companies set, track, and actualize representation goals? So if you're going, companies who are going to set goals, everyone needs to be involved. This means like everyone in the company, from leadership to ground level employees. Um, and you want to have representation. If your company lacks representation, and this is me saying, Black and brown people, people of color, those from, communities who aren't highly represented in your companies, they need to be there at that table. You don't want to set goals and policies and procedures without representation there, because you're most likely going to be forgetting something. You're going to leave somebody out, and that's going to affect them. So, make sure everyone is involved. For tracking, um, I think a good way to track, aside from like literal like keeping track of the numbers, you want to get feedback. Get feedback from your employees. Let them be extremely transparent. Again, you need to be willing to take negative feedback. And then once you take that negative feedback, do something about it. Don't just be like, oh, okay, I mean, that sucks, but, and then put it away. Do something. And that might cost you money to do something about it. Oh, well, you want to have a good company culture. You want your employees to be happy and healthy. That's what it takes. I noticed on your website, you have a section for speakers. What can events and conferences do better to serve people who want to start speaking at conferences? I think you should maybe, using social media to get speakers is great. Using platforms like Black Tech Pipeline, and those who are actually, working with candidates and those seeking opportunities, working with those types of communities as well. You really want to give like juniors a chance, like, and I don't mean just junior in like an employee way. I mean like speakers, those who want to speak but they've never done it before. Really look at them. Look at boot camps. People would love to speak about their experience there. You kind of just have to be diverse and join different networks of people outside of your own, um, which means get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Um, yeah, just meet new people, and you can do that right online with social media. How about working with startups to put down the blueprints for better culture? With startups, okay, what I like about startups, is that it's a startup. It's smaller, things are new. You can really build DE&I and like an amazing culture into the foundation of your company at the start, and then grow with it. And then you keep up those practices for as long as you grow and you're alive. Um, and that really starts out with like talking about company values. Like, what are your company values? What are your commitments? Where do you want to hire from? How do you want to hire? How do you want to recruit? Where do you want to look? What type of network do you want to have? Like, those are things you can literally write out. You have to do research, obviously, as well. But really thinking about it and then making sure you grow with that, and being willing to change with it as well. So as you bring in more people into a startup, new hires, I just heard this recently, that they're a culture add, not a culture fit, they're a culture add. So they're improving the culture in a positive way. regardless of where they're coming from. Several years ago in 2015, I was involved in an equity challenge at Intel that didn't go well. I had an idea of creating equity gold standard like lead building certification and having employers sign up and be reviewed early. The organization would do HR training. I love that you're doing this. Do you feel it might be scalable for this certification idea is possible? Idea of creating equity. Sorry, I'm like rereading your question. Creating equity goals. Oh, okay. Yes, I absolutely love this. As long as those reviews consist of feedback from everyone, and when you're getting feedback from employees, it should also be anonymous. Like, don't take names, don't take emails, because people are going to be less likely to be as honest. So there are tools that you can use. I can't name them for you right now. I'd have to look, but there are tools you can use to keep everything anonymous. And just get that feedback from those who are having experiences at your organization. I think that's a great idea, though. Always holding leadership accountable and making sure that they're up to par. An accountability question: will you publish publicly the names of companies which are not improving? No, this is something I would love to do. However, it's really hard just because there's a lot of like NDAs involved in this type of work due to the PR that some of these companies have, because they're really big, right? And they don't want their names to be, they don't want any negativity on their name or any type of lashback, unfortunately. However, people do it on Twitter and everything like that. But as a business, I legally can't do that. For me, on my end, these companies know that I will not work with them. This is why, and this is what it will take for me to work with you again, which is usually a change in leadership, which means people have to be let go. People, they need to rehire, they need to trace back their steps and figure out, why things are the way they are. How did it get to this point? It takes a lot of work. So that's what I do personally. How are you able to channel your emotions for change without letting things such as anger consume you? When I work with companies, I try to be my job is to be like, I'm trying to understand where you're coming from, right? So I want you to be able to ask me those difficult questions that you probably wouldn't ask out loud. And then I do my job of explaining, like giving you that answer and explaining, whether it's me or giving you feedback from a candidate on why they felt the way they felt. That's just what I do. But it can get difficult. I would never lash out at someone or anything like that. However, it can get difficult when it seems like someone isn't trying to be receptive of your feedback or your answer. Sorry, that's my fiance. Yeah, it's difficult. I use my personal Twitter to say what I want, but when it comes to actually working one-on-one with different companies, I put myself in their shoes. Okay, they don't understand. They've never had to experience this before. How can I break it down in a way that they can understand? And it's very helpful when I work with, people who know that they have to listen to understand and not listen to debate. Since the recent events of 2020, have you seen a lot of policy changes within tech companies? I have seen a lot of policy changes. However, it's that follow through. There's a policy change, yes, but when something does happen, what's the follow up going to be? So that's a great first step, though. When you choose to go from part-time focus to running this as a business, did it feel financially or otherwise risky to you? No, it didn't, because I have a whole model that I used before even launching this business for real. I was being paid by employers before I actually said, hey, I'm officially launching with a website and everything. So if I was getting money before I even launched a public facing website, I felt like, okay, this is real. I had enough money to where if I quit my full-time job, I'll be okay for 6 months. And if it doesn't work out within 6 months, well, I'll just get another job. I mean, there's a lot that I did before choosing to leave my 9 to 5 to run this full time. However, like the one thing that I had was like assurance or reassurance that I would be okay, like for this period of time, if nothing were to work out afterwards. But I mean, starting a business is always risky. And I just want to add, like, um, you can be an entrepreneur with a 9 to 5. Don't ever feel like, oh, if I'm serious, I'm going to leave my full-time job and just do this. You have to eat. You have bills to pay, because at the end of the day, bills don't care if you have a job or not. They're still going to come to you, and they're still going to knock on your door asking you, where's my money, right? So, having a 9 to 5 while being an entrepreneur is extremely difficult. It's extremely tiring, but it's doable. You can do it. So yeah, another one from the Q&A. I am a program manager of an internship program that funds and supports interns for early stage tech companies. We completely acknowledge and see there is an underrepresentation of BIPOC in the leadership and tech teams, like you say, and we're trying to do what we can. Part of my service is support the intern's experience, basically like you do with your check-ins. I am white though. I wonder if that might be a barrier for A, my ability to understand, or B, because I'm white, the person might not feel safe despite my intention. Am I off base, or we do better there? Um, I mean, this is definitely very real. It can be really hard to explain to someone who does not look like you or come from your community, how you feel and the things that you're going through. And so, I mean, yeah, it can be really hard for someone to be completely transparent, because it's tiring trying to, again, like explain why I feel the way I feel, because you may not understand it. You know, like I've personally dealt with instances where I felt, I guess it's like a microaggression. There are things that I experienced and felt, and I can't explain it to you and expect you to understand, because on your end, you may just be like, oh, that could be anything. Oh, it's a coincidence. I wouldn't say that's racism because it's not like direct, but you wouldn't understand it because you've never been through it. So it can definitely be difficult. Um, and this is why I say, like, it's really good to have representation on every single team. So if you are the only one, it's totally fine that you're doing this work. Like, this is amazing. But there should be more representation, in case someone does want to speak to someone who may understand them a little better. So that's definitely like the fact that you're concerned about that. I totally get it. I think it's something that's very real. And that's something you should also talk to these interns about as well. You should ask for their feedback. What would they like to see from this program when it comes to doing these check-ins? Do you pitch your self-visit as consulting service? No, because I don't really offer consultations. I'm not this giant expert who's had years and years of experience. What I'm doing is I'm listening to feedback from someone and I'm relaying it as an external party. So for me, this person can be very transparent with me and not feel like their job or their time at the company is in jeopardy. I'm taking that feedback and relaying it and then helping the company improve themselves. So definitely not consulting service. I'm just like here to recruit, but there's an added accountability service with it, and it's mandatory. I think those are all the questions, and they were incredible questions. Thank you. Cool. All right. It was great speaking with you all. Thanks so much for having me. Take care. Bye.